Listeners, gather close. This is Mr. Horror Global. Tonight's story comes from a collector of true hauntings, about the dead who never leave, who wait at the edge of a dark road, or inside a glowing phone booth, hoping someone will finally stop. Viewer discretion advised. The ones still waiting. I've always been the kind of person who collects ghost stories. Not the campfire kind. Anybody can invent those. I mean the ones that left a paper trail, the ones that ran in a real newspaper, or that a television crew went out to debunk and came home unable to explain. Those are the ones that stay with me, because somebody sober and serious wrote them down and put their name to it. Let me tell you about a few of them. They're all the same thing in the end. The dead who don't leave, the ones who wait at the edge of a dark road or inside an old phone booth, hoping someone will finally stop. The first one starts with a temple, an old one, up in the hills above a small town. It was never a grand place, never famous, but the local families kept coming back to it year after year, and there was a reason. Generations ago, sickness swept through the village and took the children, fevers, one house after another. The parents climbed up to that temple and prayed, and the story goes that the children recovered, every one of them clean and whole. So ever since, mothers and fathers made the trip up there to pray for their kids, for their health, for their safety. It was that kind of place, gentle, protective. Then, in the summer of 1977, people started seeing something on the road in front of it. It began with a taxi driver. He was coming along that road late one night, headlights cutting through the dark, when he caught something up ahead. He eased off the gas. As he got closer, the headlights washed over it, and the shape resolved into a person, a woman, crouched down low right in the middle of the road, knees up, hunched over herself. Now your first instinct on a black night like that is to be afraid, but this driver, he felt sorry for her more than anything. He thought, maybe she's not right in the head, maybe she's run off from somewhere, maybe she's lost. He couldn't just drive past a person sitting in the road like that, so he slowed down, meaning to pull over. But the closer he got, the stranger it felt. It was the dead middle of summer, one of those nights where the heat just sits on you and won't lift, and this woman was wearing a heavy black sweater, the kind you'd pull on in the dead of winter, and her hair was so long that even crouched down on the ground like that, it pulled and dragged in the dirt around her. Something about it made his skin crawl. He hesitated, pull over, don't pull over, and ended up rolling right past her, maybe 30 feet, before his conscience won out and he stopped the car. Before he opened his door, he glanced up at the rearview mirror to check the road behind him. She was gone. A second ago she'd been crouched there in his mirror, and now the road was empty. He got out. He walked back all that way, looking left and right into the dark, and there was no one, not a soul, and it hit him all at once. Standing there, what if that wasn't a person at all? He got back in his cab and drove out of there as fast as he could. After that, the sightings came in a flood. Another cab driver saw her the same way, a woman down low on the road, head hanging, long hair wild and loose, black sweater, but this one looked weak to him, sick, like she might be hurt. So he stopped, got out, came toward her, and called out, "Are you all right?" And she lifted her head and looked at him, and he started backing away, because her face was covered in wounds, open ones, that hadn't healed, that had gone soft and started to come apart. Not cuts, more like something melting. He said you could not look at a face like that and believe a living person was sitting in front of you. He ran. Those two stories spread fast, and other drivers came forward. "I saw her too. I saw her last week. That stretch of road in front of the gentle little temple became the most talked about haunted spot for miles. The woman in the black sweater. And then, on the 1st of December that year, the temple caretaker found something on the road. At first it looked like an ordinary stone, but there was writing on it, scrawled in chalk. 3 words, more or less. There is a ghost. He figured it was kids. The place had a reputation now. Somebody was having a laugh. The stone was a good foot across though, and heavy, not the kind of thing you toss around. He wrestled it off to the shoulder of the road and went on with his day. Next morning he came to work and the stone was back, right in the middle of the road again. Annoyed now, muttering about his luck, he hauled it back to the side. A week later, the 7th of December, that same stone had turned up somewhere new, set down beside a big water tank near the road. He couldn't figure who kept moving the thing, and this tank, it happened to be a reservoir, one of those sealed water reserves kept full in case of fire. And it happened that on that very day, a crew came by to do their routine inspection of it. They cranked open the lid. It hadn't been opened in a long while, and the smell hit them like a wall. Not sewer rot, something far worse than that, something that made them gag and turn their heads. One of them pointed down into the dark water and said, What is that? Down there." There was something floating in it, face down. It was a body, a woman by the look of her. They brought her up. She'd been in the water a long time, swollen, far gone, badly decomposed, and her face had been destroyed. There was no recognizing her. But when word got around the town that they'd pulled a body out of that tank, people didn't even hesitate. They said, "That's her. That's the woman everybody's been seeing all these months. The one in the black sweater." Because when they found her, she was wearing a black sweater. The autopsy gave them one lucky break, old dental work in her back teeth, and that's how they put a name to her. She was 21 years old. I'll call her Nora. She'd been reported missing some time before, and the worst of it, the part that sits heaviest, when she died, she was pregnant. 6 months along. So how long had she been down there in the cold water? The last time anyone had inspected that tank was about a year earlier. From the state of her, the guess was she'd been put in there right after that previous inspection, dropped in and sealed up, exactly when no one would open it again. The police moved fast. They turned up a man Nora had been seeing, and under questioning he broke and confessed. He had killed her, and he had dumped her in the tank. Here's what it was. The two of them had been together, and she got pregnant, and she went to him and said, "There's a baby now, let's get married." And he kept putting it off, and putting it off. Time slid by, the way it does, and she got to 6 months along, past the point of any other choice, and still he wouldn't say yes. And the baby? What about the baby? Somewhere in there he made his decision. He would kill her, and the child with her. He'd had his eye on that lonely water tank where nobody ever went. He called her out to it. And that's where it happened. He put her in the water and walked away. From the day they opened that lid to the day he confessed was 3 days. 3. Everyone had expected the case to drag on for months. The body so decomposed, her face so far gone, they had nothing to start with. Instead, it cracked open almost immediately. People said afterward that maybe Nora helped, that her spirit had been out there the whole time, working the case from the other side. It ran in the newspaper on the 8th of December, 1977. A real paper, a serious one. And here's why this one gets under my skin. Usually it goes the other way around. Something terrible happens in a place. A murder, an accident. And then the ghost stories start, and you can fairly say, well, people heard about the tragedy and their imaginations did the rest. But this was backwards. First, the whole district was seeing a woman in a black sweater on the road, and only months later did they find the body of the woman in the black sweater in the tank. The haunting came first, the corpse came second. And it doesn't end there. Years later, in 2004, a well-known paranormal researcher was putting together a book of stories like this, and this one caught his eye. The tank, the black sweater, the rumor that came before the body. He drove out to see the place for himself, but the tank was long gone by then, so he changed his plan. He'd go and visit Nora's home instead. He tracked down the address ahead of time. He punched it into his car's navigation and set off, and he drove a long way. And the navigation said, "You have arrived." He looked around. This wasn't right. There was no house here. There was nothing here that a house could be. What there was a cemetery. He got out, just to be sure, and he walked up to the graves, and he wiped the dirt off one of the stones to read it. "Here rests Nora." The address he'd entered was a house. The machine kept bringing him to her grave instead. And before you say his device was just broken, a television crew went and did the exact same thing later, entered the home address, followed the directions, and ended up standing at Nora's grave. Now her house and her grave are only about 1/3 of a mile apart, so it's the same little area, but the navigation went wrong right at the entrance to the village. There's an intersection at the edge of town. Turn left and you reach her house. The system told them every time to turn right, toward the cemetery. They called the company that made it and asked if there was a fault in the maps. The company checked and told them there's nothing wrong, no error. People who know the story believe Nora is still wandering, and that what she's looking for is her own body, because of one more detail, one they don't put in the cheerful version. When they recovered her from the tank, she was so far gone that as they lifted her, her head and part of her body came apart. There was nothing anyone could have done. And so the thought is, she's out there still, trying to find the rest of herself, trying to find her head. These days the site is filled in with earth, smoothed over, sealed up. No one can go in. Every trace of what happened 40 years ago is gone, and still, somehow, the woman from the cold water seems not to have left. Now, the next ones are about phone booths, and I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for a payphone. They're nearly extinct now, you hardly ever see one, but they're still out there in a few places, and people do still use them. Hold that picture in your head. A single lit-up phone booth, glowing all by itself, on the edge of the dark. Sometimes that's frightening enough on its own, before anything happens at all. There's a cemetery, an enormous one of the biggest anywhere near the city. We're talking about 100 football fields of ground. It sits close to town, with houses all around it, and honestly it doesn't read as a graveyard so much as a big, friendly public park. And right at the entrance, put there years ago for visitors, there's a payphone. One evening a man was leaving the place after paying his respects, on his way out, and he passed the booth. It hit him with a wave of nostalgia, and he had a call to make it home anyway. So he stepped in, lifted the receiver, started to dial, and realized he had no coin on him, nothing for it. He went to hang up. And through the receiver, faint, he heard a voice. A woman's voice, saying something he couldn't quite make out. There was no one on the line. There was no coin in the slot. He hung up fast and got out of that booth, because all of a sudden the small glass space felt like it had someone else in it. He'll tell you to this day it was not in his head. He just can't tell you what it was. That booth is famous for it. The story goes that at certain hours, if you pick up that receiver, you'll hear a grown woman's voice, faint, far away, and it's not one or two people who've heard it, it's a lot of them. It made that cemetery the most unsettling spot in the whole region. A while back, another visitor came by, and the traffic had been bad, so she got there later than she meant to, after dark. She did what she came to do, and was hurrying back out when the booth caught her eye, glowing in the black, and what stopped her wasn't the booth. It was that there was a little girl standing alone inside it, behind the fogged-up glass. A small child, by herself, after dark, in the middle of a cemetery. So the woman went toward her, worried, thinking maybe she was lost, maybe she needed to call home, maybe she could help. But as she came up on the booth, she saw the girl wasn't alone after all. Behind the child stood a grown woman, her mother, surely. The visitor felt herself relax. They were fine, mother and daughter, and she turned to go. And a cold feeling went up her back, and she looked again. In those few seconds, the booth had emptied. The girl was gone. The mother was gone. Did I imagine it, she thought, but no, I can still see their faces. The chill went through her whole body. It kept happening to people. Another man was passing by at night when a little girl came up out of nowhere and spoke to him. "My mom's over at the phone. Will you come with me?" And before he could decide anything, she'd taken his hand, just grabbed it, and started pulling him along. It was too late to say no. He thought, maybe something's wrong with the mother, and he let himself be led. But the girl was strong, far too strong. He couldn't understand how a child could pull like that. She hauled him, almost by force, toward the booth, and without really thinking, he reached out and opened the booth door. And went cold, because the hand he'd been holding the whole way, the little girl's hand, suddenly felt like a grown woman's hand, bigger, rougher. He flinched and turned to look at her, and there was no girl. The hand was gone. The child was gone. He said it was like being bewitched, the kind of thing you don't ever shake off. It's always the two of them at that booth, a mother and a daughter. Some people have even seen their faces reflected in the glass of the booth, and they say the expressions are awful. Twisted up with grief, furious, almost. The pair never seemed to actually hurt anyone, but to keep seeing two figures with no explanation, around the booth, inside the booth, that's its own kind of dread. Last summer, a couple who were big into the occult heard about the place and came out, thrilled, looking for exactly this. They'd done their homework. Most of the sightings happened at night, so they deliberately turned up well after dark, close to when the gates would shut. Quiet cemetery, and the two of them, when they finally spotted the booth, weren't scared at all. They were having the time of their lives. They marched right in. What would frighten a normal person was a dare for these two, a little thrill. But they waited and waited, picking the receiver up and putting it down. And nothing happened. With both of them crammed in there, the glass started to fog from their breath, and the husband kept wiping it clear, dead set on seeing this mother and child for himself. He said, "Man, if the phone would just ring right now, that would be perfect." Nothing rang. Nothing came. Disappointed, they gave up and stepped out of the booth and started trudging off toward the cemetery entrance. And there, where a moment before there had been nobody at all, stood a person. A woman. She was dressed all wrong for the place, a red coat, and the feeling that came off her was bad. Was she looking at them, waiting for someone? And the wife said it out loud quietly, "Why is that woman wearing a coat in the middle of summer?" That one sentence, and the hair stood up on both of them. every bit of their bravado was just gone. The wife screamed and bolted, back the way they'd come, and the husband ran after her, and they ran, away from the entrance all the way out to a convenience store down the road. The wife got her breath back and asked him, "That was a ghost, wasn't it?" No answer. She looked around. He wasn't there. He'd been right behind her. She figured he'd fallen back, so she waited at the convenience store. 5 minutes, 10, 30, an hour. He never came. In the end, she called the police, and it went down as a missing person. And from what I understand, that moment at the booth was the last time she ever saw her husband. When the crews came out to cover these payphone stories, they talked to people who'd lived in that area a long time, and they came away with something they hadn't expected. Centuries ago, there'd been a great battle fought on that ground. A slaughter, really, with a terrible toll among the people who lived there. The old-timers had a name for it. They called it the blood-soaked land, and they'd watch the thrill-seekers come out for fun and just shake their heads. They don't know enough to be afraid of the dead. They could feel it, the long residence, the sour, wrong weight of the place. They believed the spirits who never found their rest were still wandering through it. And then on top of all that, somebody went and built a cemetery there. A cemetery and a phone booth at its gate. Put it that way, and maybe the hauntings were only ever a matter of time. There's one more, and it's another payphone, of all things. Out in a small town in the hills, maybe 40 miles from the city, there's a tunnel, a newer one, and oddly enough, somebody installed a payphone right at the mouth of it, and the legend goes like this. At 2 in the morning, from that payphone, you dial 111. When you do, you don't get a ringtone, you get a single flat tone, going on and on. Then you hang up, and a little while later the phone rings back, and if you answer it, there's a boy on the line, crying. People believe the boy's name is Tommy. And they believe that because of something that used to be written at the mouth of an older tunnel nearby, the words were, "Don't die anymore, Tommy." To understand that, you have to go back to the old tunnel. It's about half a mile away from the new one. It was built back in 1928, barely 500 feet long, just a little tunnel, but for something so short, the accidents there were strange and constant. It got marked as a hazard, a place to take care, which you'd never guess from a photo of it. It looks like nothing. And the crashes were all the same kind. The car in front stops short, and the car behind plows into it. And every one of those lead drivers said the same thing. Something ran out in front of me, so I hit the brakes. And every time they got out to look, there was nobody there. Not a person, not so much as an animal. Over and over, the same impossible thing. And the reason people give for all of it is a death. On the 2nd of September, 1965, there was a boy of 17 in that town, and he was crazy about motorcycles. I'll call him Tommy. He'd been after his parents for ages, begging, and finally they gave in, and he got the bike he'd been dreaming of. And the joy of it didn't last, because riding through that old tunnel he was struck head-on by a big truck coming the other way, and he was killed. A boy with his whole life ahead of him, gone, and before anyone had even finished grieving him, the rumors started. That same winter, a truck driver was coming through the tunnel, and just as he reached the far end, a person darted out into the road in front of him. He stamped on the brakes, sure he'd hit them. He got out, sick with dread, and checked the front of the truck, the sides, the back, even underneath the wheels. There was no one. After Tommy died, the sightings of something running out into the road just exploded, and so did the crashes. And when his family heard about all of it, they came to think that maybe their son's spirit was caught in that tunnel, still there. So to try to comfort him, to lay him to rest, they put up a sign by the tunnel and set out a small stone Buddha. And terribly, it only made people more afraid because of what the sign said.
Don't die anymore, Tommy.
People who read it couldn't agree on what it meant, and it unsettled them. Was it spoken to Tommy or to the driver reading it? If the family meant it for their boy, then it's this unbearable thing, a spirit who keeps dying in that tunnel over and over, and his parents pleading with him, please stop dying. But maybe that's not it, because Tommy is about the most common name there is in that part of the world, the everyman name. So maybe it wasn't aimed at the dead boy at all. Maybe it was a warning to every driver coming through. Don't you die here too. Nobody ever settled it. In time, the old sign was taken down. It had simply worn out, and they opened a new tunnel a little way off. And you'd think that would be the end of it. But the strangeness followed. It turned up at the new tunnel, in that payphone at the mouth of it, the one where people still swear they can reach Tommy's voice. To this day they go out there to try, and people still catch sight of some figure they can't account for and get startled into a wreck. The local drivers all know to be especially careful at that tunnel. It's the kind of warning that gets carved into a place. A dark, empty stretch of night, and one phone booth standing there alone, throwing its little square of light. Sometimes that's the whole horror, right there, before anything happens. And as someone who loves this stuff, I'll admit there's a sadness in it, because the booths are vanishing. Soon there won't be any left to stand alone in the dark. So here's what I keep wondering about all of them. The road, the cemetery, the tunnel. The dead seem to gather in these places. Do they live inside the phone booth itself? And when the booth is finally torn out and carted off, do they go with it? Do they just blink out? Or is it the other way around? Is there some reason they can't leave it? Something that keeps them tethered to the one spot, waiting? Because even right now, tonight, at one of the few payphones left standing somewhere out there in the dark, the phone might be ringing, and it might be one of them calling,